My father died in June, and it was 4 weeks before he would have had his first great-grandchild, my first grandchild. And I'm thinking about identity. We are thinking about identity. And there's lots of things I usually think about who I am. 5'2", white, cisgendered, Liverpudlian, theatre maker, passionate believer in human rights, and one of 4 daughters. But my dad dying means I'm now Jude Kelly without a dad. And it's made me think about the narrative I normally tell about what's driven me to try to make the world as good a place as I can make it, which I think is why we're all here. Nobody's going to spend all day in a dark room listening to stories about positive change unless we've all got a slightly geeky aspect to us which goes, let's make the world better. So I've been creating the WOW, Women of the World movement, for the last 9 years. And I say, and it's true, that it's because I suddenly realized I wanted to come out as a woman. I've always been a woman. I've always supported women. I've always been a feminist, but there comes a moment, and some of you will understand this for different reasons, when you have to cross the line and say, I'm going to be a woman, stay a woman, and talk about being a woman. Because now is the time to make change happen. And although I never expected to have the kind of hubristic ambition that would say, and it's going to be a global movement, I wrote it on the back of an envelope in a cafe, I would start this festival, and to my amazement, it is now in 20 countries across 5 continents and still growing. And it's as important to me. It's as important to me that it's in Bradford as it is in Bangladesh, as it is in Uganda, as it is going to be in other places right across the world. I say that the significant driver for me is understanding that, like people like Angela Davis or these women here, I come from ordinary stock. My grandmother left school when she was 12 and she had 14 children. My mother left school when she was 15 and she had 4 daughters. But the bit that I have to speak about today is my grandmother left school when she was 12. She had 14 children and my father was the youngest. And he had 9 sisters. And there's something that happens to men when they become fathers of daughters that I've become really interested in. Now, when you speak to many men and they speak about their commitment to equality, and many do, and you say, well, what's got you interested in this? It is almost always, they say to me, well, my daughter taught me this, or I've just had a daughter. And this is the leader of the WOW that we do, Lisa Mumbin, we do in Catherine, which is the Aboriginal WOW. This is the 4th Aboriginal WOW we've done. And they always say before they begin, I want to think about my ancestors, past and present. And I'm thinking about my dad. And I'm thinking about these 2 young Aboriginal girls here and what it was like for me when I was their age. And the fact that I had a dad who had a very, very strong desire to be a good feminist father. Now, the irony is, although he was a loving husband, we would be having passionate conversations about the importance of feminism in the front room, while my mum picked up all my washing off the floor, put it in the dryer, and made sure that she cooked our lunch. So only afterwards have I realised that men being a feminist for their daughters doesn't equal them necessarily being a feminist for their wife, or for their mother, or for their sister, or for anybody else in the community. But I don't want to be cynical about that. I want to try to understand, and I don't yet, what is it that suddenly makes a man go, wow, the world's not equal, and it ought to be for my daughter, or my granddaughter, or my niece, or my goddaughter. There's something that happens to some men, and not all men, that makes them suddenly become an ally. They have skin in the game, and they want to make change happen. And I think even if we think that comes out of a level of patriarchy, about ownership, about this is my girl, this is a product of me, maybe that's where it comes from. Let's not squander that energy. Let's not squander that commitment. Because I can tell you from all the research that if you look at these two girls here, if one of them thrives more than the other, it is very likely statistically it's because they had the confidence and support of their dad. We take our mother's love as unconditional, for right or for wrong, but we fear our father's approval or lack of approval. We are waiting for it. And why would that be strange? After all, the whole world is predicated on the idea that men, and white men particularly, are the givers of legitimacy. So we all stand in line, unless we fight very hard to resist, to get our moment of approval. And that causes us great conflict, a great turbulence. But for those who make it easy for their daughters by simply saying, you know what, I approve of you, what a fantastic gift that is. So here's all the young women, not all of them, but many wowzers from Bradford. And just look at them all, aren't they fantastic? Good. Who could not want those girls to flourish? Well, the answer is not all their dads. Not all dads want their daughters to flourish. I would say there are 6 different attitudes to having a daughter. The first is disappointment and anger. Some of you may have seen the film recently, which showed a woman in India admitting that she had strangled 8 of her children, daughters, strangled all of them just post-birth because she knew how angry her husband would be that they were daughters, 8. And the UN recently released figures that said that there are approximately 200 million missing women because of female infanticide, because fathers, and therefore mothers, are disappointed and angry at having a girl. That's a wound, if the girl survives, that she's going to carry for all her life. And then there's another kind of father who is just disinterested in girls. There's nothing the girl can do. She can't attract his attention. She might over-stress anything about herself to attract his attention, but she's never going to win because actually he's not very interested. He's not interested in her education. He's not interested in her career. He's not interested in her life. Doesn't mean he's not affectionate, but you know what it's like when someone's not interested in you. You carry that as your wound as well. The third thing that fathers can do is have conditional support for their daughters. I do support you, provided that you behave in the way that I think girls should. I do support you, but don't rock the boat. I do support you, provided you're the kind of girl I think you ought to be, but if you're going to be the girl that you are, I'm not going to support you so much. That's another thing that we have to carry if it happens. And then there's a fourth kind of father who so much feels that this girl is a product of them that they develop a raging possessiveness. You're my daughter, and you must do what I say and be behaving in the way that is befitting to me. You must carry my family honor. I mean, my background is Irish, and we have had all of those stories in our background. You mustn't do this, you mustn't do that, and if you bring shame on the family, even though I love you, I will abandon you. So there's a kind of possessiveness. It's not disinterest, it's not anger, it's possessiveness. But luckily, the fifth kind of father just supports the daughter for who she is, for why she is, with all her whims, all her flaws, all her foibles, all her being a human. When you get that kind of dad, my God, how far you can go. Because you aren't having to weave around for anybody to be justified as a girl. You've got the golden ticket. You're in. And you can get going. Now, lots of girls don't even notice this happening, and lots of fathers don't even know they're doing it, but it makes a phenomenal difference. These girls here, They'll all have their own stories with their own fathers, and some will fly because of their fathers, and some will fly despite their fathers. But it's such a responsible role to be a dad. It's an extraordinarily powerful role. And for those of you who might be sitting here thinking, I wonder whether I was one of the best kinds of dads I could have been, you can be a granddad and get it right then. I know. Hey, good looking, what have you got cooking? Yes. So the girls in Bradford, the wonderful wowzers who now run Speaker's Corner, decided for the first wow that they wanted to write a personal letter to Malala. Good call, we thought, and asked Malala to come and talk at WOW, because Malala is a warrior. Well, what happened? She did accept, she was on her way, the whole cathedral was packed, and then we got a phone call to say that she was in the car being sick out the window, and she'd have to turn around and go back to Birmingham. But, as Ayodun Yousafzai, her dad, said, if I'm any use, I'll come. Any use, we said, just get here. So, superheroes as they are, the Speaker's Corner wowzers, they magically instead put on Malala on Skype from her bedroom, pale but still interesting, and there he is, Zayudin. And I think in some ways he was almost a more important factor that evening than Malala, because as a father, he said to a packed cathedral of fathers and mothers, never clip their wings. He talked about how his belief in Malala is why Malala has belief in herself. That's not to say he took all credit, although some people can do that, but simply to say, why would you not support something that you love? And I know that the result of that moment was that some of the fathers in their audience revised the way they chose to love their daughters. Nobody is doubting most fathers' love for their daughters, but it's the way that you love that counts. And having this mixture of fathers and mothers and supporters of girls together gives us something that we've never had before, I don't think, in the world, which is a sort of, I'm trying to think of a non-military word for army, but a cadre, a squadron, a phalanx, a huge amount of people. You go to somewhere like Somaliland, WOW in Somaliland, where increasingly the oppression on women is stunning, reducing their capacity for action, reducing their capacity to get together, and where the girls and women literally are asking permission of so many men just to make the smallest amount of moves. And of course they do ask. And then round the rest of the world, you see programs like this, WOW in Pakistan, this young woman explaining to army officers who clearly are very interested and engaged how they could support their daughters, and they're listening and they're thinking. Because if the father's sane and loving, and most are, actually they want to think, well, what is the best way of making sure my girl has got wings and can fly in a way that isn't dangerous, where she's not going to get exploited? This is the problem, isn't it? That so many men know the risks to girls because they've been there and done that. And even if they haven't been there and done that, they've sort of seen it, the casual misogyny, the cruel violence, the sort of shifting sands of attitudes towards girls. They know all that. And so very often they become overprotective. But if they're not overprotective, then with a little group like this is in China, the under-10s feminist corners, both the boys and the girls can be thinking, we're mutually entitled to our equality. Can we all be mutually endorsed with our human rights? And of course it's down to women, but it's got to be down to men. So when I hear people say, well, I'm a feminist now because of my daughter, sometimes you hear people sort of sniggering. They kind of go, oh, yeah, you know, you would be a feminist now. Do you know, I don't care. I think if you're a feminist now, go. Let's do something with it. We can't carry on in a situation where women carry the emotional burden of making change happen. Men can't stand by and go, do you know, I'm completely on your side, and when you get equality, I'll be waiting. Men have got to be part of this story. As you said in your poem, men have got to examine masculinity and think, how do they take on their own struggle openly, vulnerably, honestly? And the relationship with women is a powerful way of making change happen. And the relationship with daughters is such a wonderful thing, potentially. But of course, it can be the sixth problem as well, which is the evangelist, the father evangelist feminist. So I was at an event a few weeks ago where somebody from Silicon Valley, a man from Silicon Valley with a very high-powered job, has landed in London with his wife and his daughter. And he told me at great length what a fantastic feminist he was. And afterwards, his daughter, who's 20, came up to me privately and said, I wonder whether you can help me handle my dad. And I said, can you give me a clue what you mean? He said, well, he loves his feminism, and I'm not really living up to it to him in the right kind of way. What can I do to stop him being angry with me for not being the right kind of feminist? And I thought, well, that's another kind of control, isn't it? That man's got to go into therapy. Here we are in Wow Harlem, and as that woman raises her arm and sings for her and everybody else's survival and power, you can't help thinking that she's either defying her dad, but even better would be she's honouring her dad. I'm honouring my dad today. Thank you.